Welcome to week 3, folks. Going quickly into the introduction this week. Learning objectives are to be able to identify the differences between cognitive, behavioral, and psychodynamic theories, and to identify skills needed to implement psychodynamic interventions. And as you go along, I'd really like you to continue to focus on the abstract pieces of the theories. So as you begin to think about interventions, think about how are the workers, how are the practitioners using the concepts of the theories to carry out the interventions. In terms of the learning activities, you'll have 2 chapters from the Walsh text on ego psychology and relational theories with a focus on object relations. So both psychodynamic theories, ego psychology, followed from Freud's psychoanalytic theory to Anna Freud, his daughter, and others, and then relational theories with a focus on object relations came a little bit later. And when we think about objects, we're really talking about significant people in a person's life, particularly in infancy and early childhood. Another good article, although the focus should be on Walsh, here's a good article on looking at Irvin Yalom's therapeutic factors in psychodynamic group psychotherapy. For those of you, particularly those of you who are interested in group work, Irvin Yalom has written a very seminal book on group work. Some excellent videos this week. This first one in particular is comparing psychodynamic and CBT perspectives using a case example. So it gives you a strong case conceptualization from both psychodynamic perspective as well as from a CBT perspective. A role play looking at CBT for depression. Another example. And then a video on object relations therapy. One on positive psychology. Not a psychodynamic approach, more of a humanistic approach, but could be useful for you as you go forward. I would say, in terms of this week, focus on the first 4 videos. You'll have your first discussion on comparing therapies. So you'll look at the different therapies utilized, using references from the textbook as well as videos, discuss the differences, and then you'll do a discussion, a second part, looking at the Widener shared case. And then the social work practice theory paper, I'll go right to that. I have it on a different tab here. This is due by next Sunday. And this is intended to provide you with an opportunity to review the practice theory and the research literature on 2 theoretical approaches with a specific problem and population. Consider doing this paper on the same problem population as your case presentation due in week 6 so that you can explore clinical work with that client population more thoroughly. Imagine you're a clinical social worker with the client. Pick 2 theories to research and describe how and why they apply to and are useful in conceptualizing the client population. Paper should be 3 to 5 pages in length. Make sure to use headings, as that helps to keep things organized and helps me to read the paper. Make sure to include title page, reference page, use APA style, and also make sure to include page numbers when you have a direct quote and use the correct formatting for that. from APA style. The paper should use the following section headings. It should be a narrative format as opposed to a bullet-pointed list. Your introduction, what you will cover, and why you selected this area. So just a summary of what you're going to cover and why. Your problem population. You'll describe the problem population. You'll include the discussion of characteristics and or challenges facing this population using 1 to 2 references. So you can go to government websites or particular articles or book chapters that talk about this particular population, demographics, prevalence of the problem, and so on and so forth. In part 3, you'll provide a review and a critique of the 2 theories using the following guidelines. So you're going to identify the theoretical framework and underlying assumptions. And when we say assumptions, we're not talking about your everyday kind of assumptions that you make about people. Although they're related, here we're talking about the particular scholar or theorist's assumption about human nature, about human problems. And then secondly, you're going to discuss the major concepts of the theory. So for example, for cognitive theory, cognitions, core beliefs, schemas, those are the concepts of the theory. And then lastly, in part A, you're going to talk about how the theory guides interventions. Now, you're not going to talk about the interventions themselves. So those would be the hands-on aspects of the work, the intervention. You're going to talk about it more abstractly. What do the assumptions and concepts say about what a worker should do in terms of interventions? In part B, you're going to discuss the research, the empirical basis or lack thereof for the theory. Now, both part A and B have the Walsh text will come very much in handy in terms of both of those, both A and B, in terms of explaining the assumptions and the concepts, as well as giving you a broad overview of the research done for this particular theory. And here you're going to talk about the research in general, not specific to your population, although you could include that. That will come in handy more for when we do the practice intervention paper in week 6. So in B, has research been done to determine the effectiveness of the theory? If so, what does the research say about the effectiveness of it with different populations? You'll have your concluding section, and this is going to be about the theories and their application to your population. So it's a summary of what you've covered in parts 1 through 3. And you're going to write briefly a sentence or two about the application to your population. You're not going to go in depth here about application. You're just going to indicate some initial thoughts about application. The expectation is that you'll summarize what you've learned and critically assess the theories and research you've reviewed. You'll have your references section. Please make sure this is on a separate page. At least 5 scholarly references, in addition to the course texts or readings. And so one of the references can be the Walsh text or one of the other course texts, even from Social Work 505. Make sure it's properly cited. And then read through the rubric, although don't base the paper only on the rubric. Make sure to read through the narrative and kind of go back and forth. There may be some differences between the explanation and the rubric, more information perhaps in the explanation. And that about covers it. So please reach out to me if you have any questions. If there's anything that you're reading through that you don't understand, or you feel like you're not getting the difference between theory and intervention, please make sure to ask questions. The first 2 chapters of the Walsh text give a really good, clear explanation of what is a theory and what is an intervention. So that might be a good place to start before reaching out to me. But I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have in regard to this paper or any of the other assignments that you have this week. All right, folks, have a great week, and we'll talk soon. Take care.